So, you know, this is one of my favorite things, a new ABC Washington Post poll. That's tough to say. Washington Post poll.
Sorry.
Shows that Biden is trailing you-know-who by nearly 10 points. But, I know there are other polls that are also happening that are saying different things. What is going on out there?
I don't know what happened with this ABC poll. I don't know if the people asking the questions were high or the people answering the questions were high. But somebody has got to have been on some edibles or something else. Because, this poll is just, off the charts. That does not mean that there's not huge red flags here. And what I do know is that you cannot take the Hispanic vote for granted because you're running against a racist. You can't take the woman vote for granted because you're running against a sexual harasser and sexual assaulter. You can't take the black vote for granted because you're running against a racist. You can't take the gay vote for granted because you're voting against a party that wants to ban drag queens. You can't take the intelligentsia vote for granted because you're running against a party that wants to ban books. The only way to run is to run hard, and I think Joe Biden needs to look at this poll, not be afraid of it, but yes, learn from it. People need to feel that the economy is better. The economy is better.
Yeah.
2 stronger years of job growth. But it's not enough to say it. People need to feel it.
I was going to say, because they're not feeling it. The 2 biggest issues were economy and immigration, and the third one is the age.
I do have I have a legal note.
Can I?
Nobody at ABC that was conducting the poll was high. I'm just doing what I'm told to do.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about polls once again, okay? I know you guys are probably going to get tired of me talking about polls, but I got to tell you guys, the polls, at the very least, give us some data about where the American people currently are, and from that data, we can extrapolate some conclusions about the direction that this country is headed in, how people are feeling about the GOP or the Democrats, Joe Biden, Trump, whoever, right? We can extrapolate these things from these polls. Now, again, some people don't believe the polls. Some people don't believe that the polls are accurate. I think that the truth about the polls and the accuracy of the polls is somewhere in the middle. I think people got to understand this thing called the margin of error, right? That the polls in and of themselves acknowledge that we're not perfect, okay? And that, again, you shouldn't necessarily look at polls as a perfect science, okay? They're not, right? They're not. So with that being said, we got to talk about this poll that is triggering the mainstream liberal media, because this poll essentially pushes back on everything that the mainstream liberal media in the Democrat Party is building their argument against the Republican Party on, okay? And again, this is fascinating, but I'm not surprised because I actually pay attention to what's going on in politics, and I'm not out here trying to lie to you guys. I'm not out here trying to push, a radical agenda or anything like that. In fact, I do a lot of pushing back against radicalism and extremism, even when it comes from the right sometimes, right? So with that being said, again, I'm not surprised to see that this poll right here from Morning Consult shows that by a 9-point margin, voters see the Democrat Party as more ideologically extreme than the Republican Party. Basically, what this poll is saying is that voters think that the Democrat Party is too liberal, right? They're too extreme, okay? They have basically fell off a cliff when it comes to extremism, which, again, if you guys watch my channel, anybody that actually keeps up with the news, anybody that understands where the modern Democrat Party's at, okay, on the political spectrum, knows that, yeah, the Democrat Party is way more extreme than the Republican Party. It's not even close. Like, it's not even, debatable, to be quite honest with you. However, you have people like Mehdi Hasan, who works for MSNBC, and he's not living in reality, okay? He begs to differ, right? He had a meltdown here. He was triggered by this poll. He says, amazing, nothing matters. The GOP supported an insurrection and are about to nominate the guy who incited it. Their elected representatives deny climate change, push anti-vax nonsense, and meet with Holocaust deniers. But sure, it's the Democrats who are more ideologically extreme. Yeah, So this guy really believes that the Democrat Party is not more ideologically extreme than the Republican Party. And again, this really does show you that these guys are not living in reality, okay? Because let's actually break this down. Let's break this down, okay? Let's take Mehdi Hasan and what he's saying about some of these issues. Being skeptical of climate change is not an extreme position, right? There's nothing extreme about that. There are plenty of people in this country that have questions about the climate science. The Republican Party as a whole, I would say, although they're hesitant to talk about the subject, if you press them on it, they're probably going to go with the mainstream liberal media narrative on climate change. So to say that the Republican Party is extreme on climate change is silly, right? Push anti-vax nonsense. Again, this is another example of these guys not being connected with reality, with actual real voters, okay? With regular, everyday, common folks. There are plenty of people that are skeptical of vaccines, right? The GOP as a whole, the party, the elected representatives, they're not pushing back against the vaccine, right? In fact, they're being criticized enough for being too pro-vaccine. And then you got this other part here about they meet with Holocaust deniers. Okay, again, you know, I think he's talking about Nick Fuentes in the meeting that he allegedly had with Trump or something like that. But again, Holocaust denial is not a mainstream position in the Republican Party. I don't even think it's a commonly held belief among the base, right? Actual GOP voters, okay? I don't think I've ever had any conversations with any conservatives where they start talking about denying the Holocaust or whatever, okay? I don't think I've had many of those conversations. But anyways, these people are hanging their hat on this idea that the GOP is so extreme, right? While, again, the country suffers under the extremist policies of the Biden administration. They want to talk about the insurrection, okay, and the GOP supporting the insurrection, which they didn't, right? The party actually came out as a whole and denounced what happened on January 6th, right? It's just so funny how this guy leaves that out. But Democrats supported years of political violence in this country by far left groups, whether we're talking about BLM, who rioted for months after the death of George Floyd, destroyed cities, destroyed neighborhoods, destroyed businesses. People died, okay? The country witnessed it. Antifa, the Roe v. Wade rioters. Democrats have been in support of political violence that has been much worse than anything that happened on January 6th. They openly supported it and promoted it, along with Mehdi Hasan's network, MSNBC. So even on the issue of political violence, just objectively speaking, you cannot sit here and say with a straight face that Republicans are more extreme or that Republicans are more of a threat to commit acts of political violence in this country than Democrats. It's just not true. I mean, we are still dealing with the threats that Roe v. Wade rioters and extremists are issuing against pro-life centers, right? Pregnancy centers, centers for women that help them out with their pregnancy. Again, this is what's happening. These people were invading churches, trying to assassinate Supreme Court justices, trying to intimidate them outside of their homes. But again, these people want to keep pointing to one event, January 6th. Oh, January 6th! When it's like, well, anybody that is actually really objectively paying attention to what's going on in this country can see that, well, actually most of the political violence is coming from the left. Right? And again, this is what's showing up in the polls. Okay? And I really do believe that it's channels like mine that point out this extremism and the hypocrisy on the left on a daily basis. I really do think that I'm having an impact on some of this stuff in regards to how people see it. Because, again, I'm telling you, if you're paying attention, there is no comparison in regards to extremism. Let's talk about Democrat policies. Right? Let's talk about Democrat positions. If you believe there's only two genders or two sexes, which is what most people in this country believe, right? If you pressed them on it, right? If you told them, hey, nobody will ever know what you actually think, okay? Because, liberals are afraid to say this out loud because they may call, bigots or whatever. Do you believe there's only two genders? they're going to say yes, right? There are only two genders. There are only two sexes. A vast majority of people going to believe that, right? A vast majority of people do not believe it's okay to have minors transition. They don't believe that. They don't want men competing against women in sports. They don't think it's fair. They're not on board with gender ideology. However, the mainstream position in the Democrat Party is so extreme that if you believe that there's only two genders, you are a right-wing extremist, right? You're anti-LGBTQ. That is extreme, right? That's how extreme the Democrats are. They're so far left that believing in biological facts in reality is a bigoted, extreme right position. That's a far right position, right? You're far right. You're far right if you don't believe that discriminating against white people is a good thing, right? Another position in the Democrat Party that has affected these liberal cities, defunding the police. That is extreme, right? That is an extreme policy. Being soft on crime, letting criminals run free, zero bail. That is an extreme policy. Again, these are mainstream positions in the Democrat Party. Look at the open borders. Look at what's going on with the border. What's happening is extreme. Sanctuary cities are extreme. What the Democrats pushed in regards to economic policy, spending trillions of dollars when we didn't need it, this is extreme. On a vast majority of issues, the Democrats have gotten more extreme on the issue, okay? I mean, it's not even a comparison. I think Mehdi should just delete that tweet, right? He should delete the tweet, okay? Because it's really silly. It really shows you that this guy's not grounded in reality. Even on issues like abortion, right, which benefited the Democrats in the midterms. If you asked a Democrat, do they support abortion up until birth and after birth, they can't give you a straight answer. They can't give you a straight answer because even on that issue, they're extreme. Okay, they're extreme on almost every single issue. But again, guys like Mehdi Hasan, who, claim to be smart guys, right? They're paying attention to politics. They're surprised. Oh, God. Why is the January 6th narrative propaganda not working? Well, because anybody with two brain cells to rub together can see that January 6th was not worse than the race riots or the Roe v. Wade riots or the Antifa riots that Democrats openly supported. Like, you don't get a leg up. You don't get a W on political violence when your party supports it. It doesn't make sense. But again, what this really shows, guys, is that what they're doing is not working. Like he's telling you, nothing works. Our propaganda is not working. The American people are not falling for our nonsense that we push on television to try to convince them that the GOP is so extreme, they're so far right. No, actually, the American people are probably more right-leaning than the liberal media wants to admit that, hey, they're not on board with this far-left, woke, progressive agenda that these people are pushing. Now, in regards to why they don't vote that way on a consistent basis, that's a head-scratcher, right? It probably has something to do with the fact that the GOP is not necessarily a very inspiring party, okay? So, probably has more to do with that, okay, in regards to why people don't consistently vote that way, even though I think that's where, the American people are probably closer to the center than the extreme left. But regardless, right, again, you have Democrats, people like Roland Martin, he's melting down on a daily basis about the polls. Stop talking about the polls. You guys are talking about the polls too much because, again, the polls don't fit the narrative. You need to talk about the core issues. Well, again, if you talk about the core issues, that still doesn't help out the Democrats. They're doing terrible on the core issues. The core issues are crime. The core issues are the economy. The core issues are immigration. Terrible. So, again, these people, it's just so funny. Their propaganda is not working, and they're openly admitting it, right? They're trying so hard to convince the American people that the economy is great, right? When people are paying $700 more per month just to survive than they were before Biden was elected. You can't tell people who are literally going to the grocery store and spending 3 to 4 times more than what they used to spend that the economy is great. You can't convince them of that. No amount of propaganda is going to convince them of that. And then these people want to act surprised and they want to get triggered and melt down because the American people aren't buying this idea that the GOP is more extreme than the Democrats because of what happened on January 6th, right? Or because there's some skepticism about climate change or the vaccines, right? These things that the liberal media fearmongers about, it's not working, right? It's not working. Just like the indictments against Trump are not working because the reality is that people know that under Trump, this is what my economic situation was like. This is what my reality was. And it was much better than what we have under Biden. There's no amount of propaganda that's changing that. And you're seeing these people lose their mind because their propaganda is not working. It's incredible. They really do think that the American people are dumb. And then they throw fits when they realize that, okay, the American people are not as dumb as we thought they were. It's incredible stuff. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.